the drifts, and it's a literary novel that takes place in northeastern Arkansas in a little town called Bay, which is it's a real town there, just across the bridge from Memphis. And I grew up my whole life with my Aunt Sarah, my Aunt Doodle, Aunt Ale, Grandma, the whole posse, telling you stories about this little town, right? And this book is not a retelling of those tales, but those tales certainly attach themselves to my imagination, and now we have a book. The book is told from 4 different points of view, and the little section I'm going to read is from the point of view of a factory worker named Wilson. And Wilson is going to propose to the trans dad in the town. So the trans person, transgender, right? Who is a dad who's got a couple of beautiful children, Pity and Squirrel, and their names. And the Wilson has never, she's had sex, she's in her, late 30s or whatever, but she's never had intimacy, like a deep connection with somebody. And so tonight, she's going to ask Dal, the trans dad, to marry her, propose to him.
Is he single?
Yes. Yeah, they're all single. And, the trans person's divorced.
Uh-huh.
So, in this particular scene I'm going to read for you, everything's coming down at Avery's, which is sort of a local bar, roadhouse.
Wait,
yeah.
So he used to be a woman and now he's a man?
Well, not the person that is going to be proposed to,
right.
Dal, is a trans. He is still biologically a man, but he wants to transition to be a woman.
Does she know that?
Yes.
Does Wilson know that?
Yeah, in fact, one of the reasons that Wilson wants to marry Dal is because Dal has lost his health insurance. And Wilson has health insurance, and this Wilson having health insurance might be able to help Dal's situation. Yeah. And so Dal is here at this bar this night to meet these doctors from Atlanta that might be able to help him. Mm-hmm. Wilson is there to propose. But Wilson is a little annoyed at the top of this because she thinks that Dal is not dressed very appropriately. So I read this. Oh, and as she's sitting there, Wilson sees a faded Polaroid over the bar that brings kind of a wild scene back to mind. So this is called, the section is Wilson, 7:47 p.m. Wilson blinked. That Dal wouldn't know shame if it were a gold crown. Stomach acid burnt into Wilson's throat, so she gulped her beer. The bile got washed away like blouse straps, like that scarf passing as a top. This whole place was taking on the air of a $2 brothel. Dal ought to know that a shirt that size has not one iota of decent. And sure enough, all the folks were gawking at him. Crouched at their tables, they averted their eyes like they was crows looking for what was edible. They leaned forward to whisper while pretending not to ogle. When Dal crossed a leg, heads turned. When his green eyes glanced, eyes fell. He flitted his gauze skirt up and let it fall like dew. Pitch Slocum spilt his beer. Keith Emery grinned like a python. They rubbed their bellies. Bernita massaged her feet, and it wasn't 2 minutes before she was shaking her titties too. That would not be the first time Bernita acted up to protect herself. Take Pitch Slocum. Take that photo hanging over the bar, all faded to pink. Take Pat Boone. He marched in one afternoon, probably in 85 or 86, on his way to sing at that Choctaw boat. Paint him black and call him Anna if he wasn't in head-to-floor mink. Pat Boone isn't the first star that comes to mind, but when he does, he don't come in a new coat. But there he came, shimmering. The bleached mink so shiny, it must have been shampooed with glitter. And he was sour. One of the folks who come in with him Who didn't have on nothing more than what could in some quarters be called a halter top and shorty shorts, whose rear seam had the power of one of those flute players blowing in a basket of cobras, got up on the table behind Mr. Boone and put on a show. She got a hold of Pitch when he was passing and whispered her name to him. He announced, "And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to introduce Vernita Lee." The crowd clapped and Pat Boone slid down into his chair. Vernita spun a bestial web with her lacy fingers, and when she danced, her feet were not sore. Mr. Boone slumped. Pitch Slocum weaved. Mr. Boone didn't blink. Pitch was spellbound. Wilson put a quarter in the jukebox for Turn Your Radio On, a real old-time foot stomper. She had to see this. Pitch was a known dancer, and the audience's feet started in tapping. Vernita leapt off the table, pushed Pitch before he reversed. She snatched at the fluorescents and Pitch at his toes. They circled first to the right and then the left. 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps her way, 1 step his. Sheep hoe, key jerk, hip roll, knee hike, mouths open, lips wet, fangs bared, Pitch focused. Sweat sprayed, lungs caught, bent back, titties to chin. Wilson set forth that Vernita must be Pat's daughter, Debbie, behaving like a worse than a you-know-what. Maybe Vernita is a disguise. Well, it's not Debbie, I'll tell you that, stated Keith Emery. Doll wiped the bar. You understand, asked Keith? I know Debbie Boone. Debbie Boone don't look like that. Do you? You know her? Well, I know enough to know when I see her. I seen her on TV. You light up my life. Later, Vernita told the story of how she was walking from Bakersfield to Memphis to see Sun Records in person, and her collapsed arches were killing her. Pat Boone and his people come up, and Vernita had her thumb out. Given Mr. Boone's circumstances and the blessings of his may or may not be daughter Debbie, when she didn't act like a skitterbug on horse pills and a mink that could have paid close to a year's rent in Bay, he could have been in a better mood. It wasn't like he came to town every day. Dow said he probably just wanted to get away from it all and go somewhere where he could be honest and real and blow off some steam without ending up in the newspaper. That's how it is with famous people. They're just real people when it gets down to it. Vernita took Pitch Slocum by the chin and led him into the men's restroom. The jukebox played Over on the Hallelujah Show. Nobody came out and nobody went into that bathroom for 17 minutes. The song ended. Nobody put money in the jukebox. Some folks huddled at the restroom door. They pressed their ears to the jam, cast their eyes upward, roamed their fingers on the wall to feel the shaking. They listened. The folks what didn't dare be nosy stared at their tables or picked at their beers. A few chewed their ponytails and others their fingernails. A rooster howled, a lawnmower cacked, a semi sped past. Pat Boone rocked in his chair forward and backward. He'd seen it all before. When the door finally squeaked open, every eye in the place was trained on Pitch and Vernita, except Mr. Boone's. He wouldn't look at all. Finally, Vernita and Pitch came out, wiping their hands in their jeans and avoiding each other's eyes. Pitch, taking the high road, said, "She made me do it." They planted themselves at a foretop, and some kind of pride and shame must have been in it because Pitch never said what was done inside. Vernita held her head high, chest out, and eyed the gawkers. "I ain't sorry," she said. She seemed very pleased with herself. When he got up to go, Mr. Boone didn't tip, and Dow noticed that little bit of stinginess. He got his Polaroid from under the counter, slipped it to Pitch, and then called to Mr. Boone to lift his fancy schmancy coat up off the floor. Vernita plunged towards him, trying to get him to sit back down. When Mr. Boone flipped her off, Pitch got all three in the picture. Going through the door, Mr. Boone put his hand right in Vernita's face. She stopped in her tracks. He pointed his finger. "I am sorry I picked you up." And then Pat Boone blew the snot out of his nose with one finger, the way the farmers do, saying if he had to see this town in heaven, it'd be too soon. "Can't say he ain't a poet," said Dow. Vernita slumped back against the wall, watching what little future she might have had drive off. She gave up hitchhiking and decided to stay in Bay. She'd been running the laundromat ever since. And Pitch still claimed it was all her fault. Thank you.
Oh my